Jamie Jenkins is here. Jamie, how you doing?
I'm good, Mike. I think one of the big news stories of the week is you're actually going on a holiday, and you're one of the hardest working journalists over the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it hasn't been by choice. I mean, I've just thought that, well, one, I didn't fancy it. Two, I wasn't going to take a load of tests and rigorous nonsense and go places where I had to wear a mask everywhere I went. And I just wanted to be here because it's such a big story. My family went away a few times. I just didn't go with them. And I did manage to get to see my mother finally. And I did that in February. So, yeah, this is the first one in 3 years. And, of course, my heart sank when I discovered that the first weekend I was going to go, BA were going to go on strike. But they've called that off. I'm told that the earlier the flight is, the better, so that's in my favour. So I'm sort of fingers crossed, really. So I'll be away for a couple of weeks, but I'll be back. And no doubt we'll still be talking about the same things.
Well, no doubt, Mike. And you're obviously talking about Truss or Sunak, but could be Sturgeon or Drakeford as well if you unfortunately live in Scotland or where I am in Wales. So
yes.
It could, the lesser of two evils, I suppose.
Well, I suppose it could be worse. I mean, at least we don't actually really have an acting government at the moment because, like I was saying earlier on in the show, I'm not even sure who is the National Secretary of State for Health in this country. Do you know who it is?
Steve Barclay's England. Yeah, he's running England now. In fact, he's done something good this week, actually, Mike. So I think earlier on in the week, I think you were reporting here and across Talk TV, was the head of two health journals wrote to the government saying we need to bring back COVID restrictions and bring back masks and kind of social distancing and things.
Oh,
absolute bonkers, Mike, because if you look at the data, we've been talking to you the last 2.5 years about all of this. I predicted on the 1st of July, put up on my social media, a video showing what was happening in Portugal and South Africa. COVID cases were going up, and I said they've already come back down about 4 or 5 weeks after they kind of started going up. So I said, a couple of weeks' time, England, Scotland, Wales should be hitting its peak. And, look at the data as I do. What we see now, Mike, the COVID cases are coming down. We've hit the peak of the latest wave of these Omicron variants. And they're still writing to the government asking to do more things. But Barclay has come out and said, we're not going to be taking any notice of bringing in more restrictions. We're with our living with COVID plan. So I suppose he has done one thing, even if he's not even going to be in post too long anyway.
Well, we can only hope, I suppose. I mean, the bottom line for me is when is all of this inflationary spiral going to start to come to an end? And I mean, I don't know whether you can look at statistics and follow a pattern and see where it's going and where it's going to where it's going to peak. But I mean, I keep reading about the cost of fuel at the petrol pump certainly going down by about £10 per tank soon. I don't know why that's going to happen, but I don't know why people are saying it either.
Yeah, so we're starting to see, last couple of weeks, Mike, we've seen the fuel prices come down. They went up to that record high. Some places you were talking, well over £2 per litre. So the average has come down, not much over the last couple of weeks, but the wholesale price has been coming down. There do seem to be some criticism that the price at the pumps hasn't been coming down as much, but it still costs the average punter, over 500 quid a year more than what it was this time last year. But that's coming down. And the way the inflation figures are calculated then, Mike, is that you take a basket of goods across the economy. So the ONS will look at the same basket of different kind of commodities in the economy and look at the price changes. Now, if you look at the inflation, unless you see petrol prices go up again next year like they have this year, what you'll be doing next year when you're comparing, say, petrol prices or fuel prices is looking at what's the change, say, if we have this time next year compared to the price this time kind of now. So what you will find, Mike, is inflation naturally will come down unless what's driving the inflation this year drives it all again next year. So that's one of the positives. Now, Sunak saying inflation if I cut taxes, talking absolute nonsense in terms of some of the taxes he could do. I actually do agree with Liz Truss here. So yesterday, Mike, 9.4%, the latest inflation figure from the ONS. And then you can look at what's driving that inflation. So 2/3 of it is domestic energy. And then road fuel, which we just talked about, and then food prices. You cut the road fuel, then that will feed through to the rest of the economy because everything travels on trucks, so that will help with that. If you cut the domestic fuel, like get rid of the green levy or cut VAT on domestic fuel, well, that's not going to mean that me and you are going to put the heating on more. What that's going to do, Mike, is rather than bail the consumers out by giving money to energy companies, which is what they're planning on doing, it just reduces the bill a bit, which means there's less money needed to be bailing them out. Rather than people are going into debt, they'll basically be able to afford more of the bills. So those tax cuts, Mike, Rishi Sunak's talking absolute nonsense if he's saying that they will lead to inflation, because what we will find when it comes to inflation, Mike, is if you put more money in people's pockets and they're all trying to fight to spend it, yeah, inflation might happen. But these kind of tax cuts that we're talking about, they won't harm inflation at all. It'll actually help the punter.
Yeah, I think so. So in terms of the sort of the longevity then of this inflationary spiral, if the money gets spent by Liz Truss, and if somehow people have more money to spend, how long does this kind of inflation, how long before it starts to come back down again, if at all?
Well, if they cut the taxes, you'd see an immediate fall there, Mike, because when the bills come through, and ONS will look at what's the average energy bill or road fuel bill, if they cut the fuel taxes, then inflation would come down quite quickly on those. So what they're saying is that we can't afford to cut taxes, or we have to borrow more, and that's not kind of good prudent economics, is what Rishi Sunak's saying. But look at road fuel, Mike. They were cheering in the Commons back in March when he said, I think it was something along those lines, we're going to cut road fuel duty, not by 1, not by 2, and they were all cheering as he got up to 5 pence. Now, we know that didn't really see the 5p cut at the pumps. But because VAT's been charged on it, Mike, the Treasury have been taking more money in tax over the last several months than what they had planned for. Right. So cutting the tax there doesn't mean that we're going to be suddenly needing to borrow more money, because they got more money than they thought. And I think the OBR are saying that there's probably about 30 billion headroom. So there is some headroom to cut taxes. I think the government's got, over the last few years, with a furlough scheme, Mike, got used to just paying people to do things. So they're paying energy companies our energy bills now. You know, this is going to go up again in October, these prices. That will cause inflation to go up because of the energy costs when they hit the bills. So Sunak, I think the difficulty for Sunak, Mike, is he's obviously been the Chancellor. It's going to be pretty much more of the same in terms of running the economy. You can't blame him, I suppose, for a lot of, we had COVID to deal with, but it was very easy for him to launch the furlough scheme to give our money back to us, and then we're now paying for it. But that furlough scheme, Mike, as we talked in the past, went on far too long. Yeah. Lockdowns went on far too long.
And also, not everybody benefited. I mean, there were loads of people who got no money at all. Lots of businesses who got no money as well.
No, indeed, Mike. Boris stands up in the House every week, well, he was, and saying that we've got record numbers of people on payroll employment. Now, the employment figures themselves, when you look at the both of them, there are fewer people employed now than there were a couple of years ago, because what he's talking about is payroll employment, which are basically people who work for somebody else. Self-employment fell off a cliff during the pandemic because there wasn't support for a lot of those people, and a lot of them have not gone back into it, Mike. And, so I think this...
So they've gone off and got jobs, in other words?
Yeah, some of them have got jobs. They've changed the rules around if you could be an employee or self-employed, which means some people have gone on to payroll as well. HMRC have changed the rules. So I think, we've got to get some tax cuts into the economy, Mike. We've got to get it stimulated, because what we're going to be doing is talking our way into a recession, and that's not going to be good for anybody, is it?
Well, it's not. And the problem is that, as you say, Rishi Sunak has kind of got very rich on putting taxes up. He talks about not wanting to cut them, but in fact, it's our money that he's using, and it's our money that we want back.
No, exactly that, Mike. When we talk about the government cutting tax, ultimately the government just holds the balance sheet of our money. It's all our money. We have to pay the debt. We have to pay kind of the debt interest. They take the money off us in the first place. So it is our money. And I think rather than the big announcement that they put in, all those billions of pounds where if you're in a certain group, we'll pay this amount towards your energy bill, this amount, give the money back to the consumers, give it back to our pockets. Let us decide what we want to spend our money on. And I don't really support Sunak's approach of we're just going to wait until inflation comes down. There are, as we just talked about, some things you can do now to get inflation down. That's important, because, continuing with high inflation, it's not just the UK, Mike, inflation's high. It's high across the world. It's high across, Europe as well. Sturgeon and Sadiq Khan, they all come on and blame Brexit. It's not Brexit related. They're talking nonsense there. This is a world thing that's going on. But there are things that Sunak and Truss can do to solve that problem.
Well, there were things that he could have done before, but he didn't do them either. But Jamie, listen, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Jamie Jenkins, independent statistician there, telling us that, yes, the government can solve the inflationary problems. Yes, the government can actually make the cost of living crisis easier for you. But yes, they still haven't done it.